are potatoes that you might have bought to cook dinner with. Look familiar? Hey guys, welcome back to the Heart of Home. I'm Courtney and I'm super glad that you found my little corner of the world. Today I'm going to be planting two different potatoes. Yes, two different potato types, but also two different potatoes that were purchased from two different stores. So you might notice that these potatoes here are potatoes that you would typically find at like a farm store. You would find it at a seed store, plant store, whatever you might call it. A nursery is what I'm calling mine. And then these are potatoes that you might have bought to cook dinner with. Look familiar? So these are just your baby potatoes, baby red potatoes. Not too small, actually. I shouldn't say baby, but they're not the super large ones. And then these are Yukon Gold potatoes from Earl May. So we're going to do an experiment, and the second half of this video you probably will not see until this fall when we harvest the potatoes. But I wanted to share some advice with you guys. If you don't know these two words, you should. Determinate and indeterminate. If any plant, especially tomatoes, that's another plant you're going to frequently see those on the little tags of. Determinate means the plant has already determined how many fruits or blossoms that it's going to produce. It's already determined that. It is a determined plant. An indeterminate plant is a plant that says, well, I don't know how many I'm going to produce. I'm going to keep going until I'm done or until I'm content, until it gets too hot, until it's too cold, whatever it might be, depending on the plant. So potatoes can actually be indeterminate or determinate. Today, the two varieties we're working with, I know for sure these Yukon Golds are determinate. From what I can find online about these little red potatoes, they're determinate. It's kind of a mystery. We'll figure it out. But that being said, these potatoes, if they're determinate, you do not actually have to mound your potatoes as they grow. Potatoes will either grow their baby potatoes and continue to grow upward, and they'll just continue to produce and produce and produce and produce. And that is because that potato plant is indeterminate. But if a potato plant is determinate, it's going to produce and it's going to have one layer full of potatoes. You might have one or two layers, of course, but it's not going to continue to produce. From what I've experienced, that holds pretty true. So with the determinate potatoes, we don't necessarily need a bag like this that I can fold down. I can mound more dirt. I can mound more hay, more whatever you're putting on top of them. But it's all we have. So that's what we're going to use today. These are two potato bags that I'm not entirely sure where I got them. I might have also got them from Earl May a couple seasons ago. I will link them specifically or something very similar to them. You'll see the pocket in the front. So when you go to harvest, you can just pull the pocket down and kind of weasel your way through the dirt there and find the potatoes. If you're anything like my 3-year-old son, he loves to hunt for the potatoes. And so we just go ahead and pour the bag over, and he pulls through the dirt and he just finds little potatoes, and he loved it. Oh, it looks like I've got a little sunflower start in here. Sunflowers are kind of finicky. I don't know if he's going to like me transplanting him. But so the soil that's in here is soil that I had from last season. I did amend it with some fresh compost. And then I've got some extra leftover just vegetables and herbs, garden soil. Now potatoes, they're pretty hardy. They're going to grow pretty well. You're not going to have to necessarily worry about the acidity or the pH level in your potatoes. If you just plant them directly into the ground, if your ground is fairly healthy, your potatoes will grow. You will notice that a potato is ready to plant when it has these weird little spiky things coming out of them. Okay, and how I kept these potatoes from going bad is I kept them in a cool, dark, and dry place. If a potato starts to turn bad, one, you're going to smell it before you find it. But two, you will know because it'll be wet, it'll be squishy, it'll be gross. You don't want to plant something like that. So each one of these little spikes coming off these potatoes is considered an eye. Now, in older times, like when our grandparents were planting or during World War II, many people would cut the potatoes so that there's only one eye per potato that you're going to plant. And if that is something you want to do, you can shortcut each eye, set them in a windowsill for a day, sometimes up to 3 days, and let them scar. And what that means is that the part of the potato that you are cutting that's exposed from the inside, you're going to let it scar over, you're going to let it harden, and that's going to give you a better chance of not having your potatoes rot or spoil once they're in a wet, moist condition. In my case, I really love getting a bunch of little potatoes, so I'm going to plant the whole darn potato. So a fun fact about potatoes is if you plant them really close together, just like any plant, it's not going to get super big. It's not going to put off a bunch of fruit. It's not going to be super prolific. But if you're like me, you like those little potatoes that are actually quite expensive from the grocery store, which is absurd, then you can plant potatoes really close together and get a small harvest. You might get a few big potatoes and that's okay. But if you're not like me and you do like those really large sized potatoes, kind of like the guy that I'm holding here, you can see him in comparison to my hand, then you would want to only plant one eye every 8 to 10 inches or so, and you would get a fairly decent harvest of large potatoes. So I am not going to cut these. However, I am going to layer how I plant my potatoes. Now, I'm not going to plant them stacked on top of each other like this because then they're going to run into each other. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant two directly across from each other. So one here, and then I'm going to stack some soil on top of there, probably about an inch of soil, inch or two. And then I'm going to stack another one, two, right here. And the reason I'm doing that is, again, because I have a determinate variety of potato, which means it's going to fill one layer of potatoes. So the bottom layer will set 2 potatoes of a harvest off in there. The second layer will have another 2 potatoes setting off another harvest. And then I'll continue to layer up until about this bag is halfway full. Again, I'm not going to go all the way to the top. That's probably too small of a space to have 3, 4, or 5 layers. I'll probably just stick to 2 or 3, maybe 3. Now the experiment here will have to come this fall when we harvest the potatoes to see if the store-bought potatoes did just as well as the nursery bought potatoes. And what you might be running into if you're an organic gardener is the risk of bugs flying in your eyes, is the risk of any pesticides, herbicides, all sorts of chemicals that could have been sprayed on your potatoes. You just don't know. So do feel free to wash your potatoes. These are not washed. I'm not too concerned about it. This is more of an experiment than anything to show you guys later on if store-bought potatoes that go bad in your kitchen or have started to grow from their eyes, if you can plant them in the soil and grow some more potatoes. So I'm going to dig down. I've dug down in the soil. You can see right now, maybe not, these are kind of dirty. The soil line is about right here on my bag. So if I fold it down, that's where it's at. I'm going to dig down about 2 inches, not all the way down. I want there to be enough room for my potato to sit off other little baby potatoes, little spuds. Okay, and I am just going to set him right there. He's sitting right here. I'm going to cover him up and do the same thing directly across from where I had that potato. Now I'm going to take 2 more and put them on the other side. So if I just go 45 degrees from where the other 2 potatoes are and about an inch higher in the soil, I'm going to plant a few more potatoes. Now, this potato's probably got 6, 7 eyes, and this one is probably closer to 10. So again, totally up to you how you want to plant your potatoes and what you are hoping to get out of them. And you know what? For funsies, and because I've only got 3 potatoes left in this sack, we're going to go ahead and plant these too. So again, I'm going to shift another 45-degree angle. So now I'm on top of the other potatoes, the first set of potatoes that I planted. I do need to add some more soil though to create more of a barrier. Alright, so I've got some pretty small potatoes here. Each one of these either have 2 or 3 eyes. I'm going to set them kind of in a triangular shape, actually. Get them covered up. Now it's really important to make sure that your potatoes do stay covered because they can become toxic when eaten if they're exposed to the sun and start to turn green. Thankfully, I've never had to experience that, so I just continue to follow that rule of thumb, and I would encourage you to too. So, grocery store bought potatoes, done. So it says cut whole potatoes into sections with each piece hearing 1 to 2 buds or eyes. Pieces should heal or scar at 60 to 70 degrees, so just inside your house, for 24 hours before planting. Now, I wouldn't go any longer than 3 days there. Plant 12 inches apart in 3-foot wide rows. Soil should be loose, fertile, and well drained. Harvest after vines have begun to die. When soil is dry, store in a cool and dry area. Now, in my experience, which it's going to be different for every plant again, but in my experience, potatoes took right around 85 to 90 days right here where we live, zone 5 in Iowa. That can change a lot depending on where you live. So I would just encourage you to follow what that tag just said. It said harvest when you start to see the tops of these potato plants, which are just going to be green foliage, dying off. All right, so these eyes aren't as developed as my store-bought potatoes that I've had in my kitchen for months. So I'm going to find the guys with quite a few eyes and get those planted instead. Okay, so I've got about 3 or 4 developed eyes on here. It looks like about 3 on this guy as well. So same thing with the other bag. This guy's got about 5 or 6. This one's got 4 starts. Okay. I'm going to get a little bit more soil to throw on top of these. All right, so those are planted. Now, how I'm going to remember which bag is which is instead of using little tags, which is fine, you can use little plastic tags or use anything as an identification marker, but I just grabbed 2 limestone rocks out of my yard and a Sharpie. It's one of my favorite ways to label things. It's free, it's natural, other than the Sharpie, but just wrote nursery bought and store-bought potatoes. And I have 2 IDs per bag because I have a 3-year-old and I'm sure he's going to see rocks in here and go, that looks fun. We're going to put a couple of these in here. And then once the grass from our backyard's latest trimming has dried, I'm actually going to top these bags with that grass just to help retain the moisture, to protect any potato that might start to surface on the top from the sun. And I'm just going to go set these over by a garage and let them do your thing. So stay tuned this summer. I will continue to give you guys updates on both of these bags and how they're growing to see if one's growing more than the other, if one's growing less. I'll show you guys that kind of stuff during our garden tours, which hopefully will be starting here pretty soon. We're in the process of making brand new garden beds, inspired by Jess at Roots and Refuge Farm. My husband hates me for it. He does all the hard work and he's so great. I love him. But stay tuned, guys, because as soon as those are done and they're planted, those garden tours are going to be taking off every week. So thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you guys on part 2. Stay tuned. See you then.